fall in love focuses around that physical looks of a person, okay? But when it comes to true love, that gets second place. When you're really truly in love with somebody and love somebody, you accept that person and you have knowledge about who that person really is, okay? The second thing is, when you're in love, you've got this idealized image about this person. But when you do something really stupid, like talking to his pet rock, nice Rocky, you suddenly, your love is shattered all over, okay? But when it comes to true love, you have got a realistic image of that person. You know his weaknesses and you know his strengths. What is very interesting to see is what happens when problems arise. When you're in love, you either avoid the problems or the feeling suddenly disappears. But when you really truly love someone, you're willing to work through these problems. And eventually the whole relationship deepens and there's a lot of benefit out of this.
But Krista, I don't want to go and sit and examine the whole thing and analyze it and dissect it and find out what the specific ingredients are. I mean, that's just like schoolwork or an exam. I thought love is just supposed to be nice. Why should it really matter whether what I'm feeling is real, true love or not?
You see, Jason, a lot of people do get hurt because they cannot distinguish between love and being in love. Being in love is very self-centered. It's possessive. You want to be with that guy or the girl all the time. And as soon as somebody else would go and talk to her, you wouldn't want to send that guy to the moon, right? But on the other hand, if you really loved somebody, you would let him relate with some other people. You would let her share some time with her friends. And the other thing is, when you're in love, you want everything right now. You're not prepared to wait. But if you really love someone, you will really have some self-control and you'll be willing to wait. You won't rush into having sex or rush into petting. You'll be willing to think firstly of that other person's needs and not of your own. Okay? And that's why it's so extremely important that you really can distinguish between when is it love, really true love, and when are we talking of only being in love.
Talking about true love, I think this is where we can illustrate with this point with what happened in your own life. I mean, you and Liesel, who is now your wife, were young and in love.
Oh, for sure.
When you were told that you're HIV positive.
Yeah.
But if she had only thought of herself then, she could have left you.
She could have.
Yeah, but she didn't.
You know, I also experienced that really as true love because she knew before we got married that I was HIV positive. She knew that if we would marry, she won't be able to have children and that I may die of AIDS at a very early age. But notwithstanding that, she was willing to marry me, and I really feel that was true love.
He was a student at university. He'd met a girl and fallen in love with her. He intended to get married to her. But then there was a problem. She was also a student at the university. She'd also fallen in love. He loved her too. But the problem was, he was HIV positive.
I felt it's not realistic to go on with the relationship. I felt if I were still healthy, if I wasn't HIV positive, then we could have gone on with the relationship. We marry and have children and everything. But suddenly, after I was tested HIV positive, I felt it's not a good thing for Liesel to marry me because she won't be able to have children. If she marries me, then she may have to look after me as an ill person in a quite short time period. I may die off within the next few years and Liesel have to be a widow then and live with the stigma of being married. So she was married to a HIV positive guy. And everything just felt for me that's wrong. Let's stop it here. I really cared about this woman, so it was difficult for me. But then she said, but she loves me. And I really appreciated that she didn't shy away from me. She was just there for me. And then I said, but Liesel, I don't think it's right for you to marry me. She said, but I really care about you, and I don't think that the love that we share just happened by chance. And therefore, I will prepare to marry you.
Well, I decided, well, I'm not going to leave him now. I'm going on with this relationship. And luckily, he decided to go along. Everyone told us not to go on with the relationship. Everyone told us not to marry, not to plan ahead. And we just decided, well, I love him, so that's why we went along with all of this. And luckily he loved me as well.
So it wasn't even leap year and she married me. So it was nice. And I appreciated that she stood by me up till now.
Krista and Liesl have found their happiness in their love for each other. It is unselfish and unconditional. In their unique and very difficult circumstances, this love is a gift and a blessing to them both.
Do you think we as teenagers can really experience true love?
Yes, I do, Nobby. And if I can even go so far as to say that I think that teenagers in a lot of circumstances can really understand true love a lot better than adults do. Because to understand true love isn't a lot of experience. It's a way of thinking. It's an attitude. But it is true that age helps you to distinguish between when is it true love and when is it being in love.
But what I'd like to know is, how can you tell if it's true love? I mean, sure, it probably means slightly different things to different people, but generally, what would you say is true love?
Well, Enrico, to define true love can be pretty confusing, but it helps to know there's basically three kinds of love. The first one is this if love. You can say, I love you if you treat me the way I think you should, or if you live up to my expectations, all right? If love is conditional. You're committed to that love as long as that person lives up to your own expectations. But as soon as he doesn't live up to your expectations, your if love is withdrawn. The second love is this because of love, okay? Then you can say, I love you because you treat me special, or because you are the most wonderful guy in the school, or because you're the most popular girl in the school, okay? At first glance, there's nothing wrong with this because of love. But what happens if this guy suddenly forgets to phone you, or he breaks out in an acne attack and he's got spots all over, or you've got a fight, or even a more better looking, more stunning guy arrives on the scene? When that happens, you can surely kiss this because of love bye-bye. Okay? So there's a third kind of love, and this third kind of love is the no matter what love. And the no matter what love loves a person regardless of their looks. It loves a person for who they are or who they are becoming. And that, I believe, that is true love.
Oh yes, that is definitely true love. And I hope that we all do find true love and we live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Now next week we'll be talking about a different kind of love and why we need a lot of that kind of love in the world today. So until then, ciao.
Well, if you... Sure.
Hello and welcome to Love Life. We've been talking a lot about our love lives and our relationships and all the choices that we have to make in these areas. And we've seen that making these choices is a lot more important now than ever before, possibly because that the risks are greater than ever before. One of the risks is AIDS, and that is something which in some way touches all of us.
Regtig waar, dit is 'n verskriklike ondervinding om te weet jy loop in 'n kind wat jy nooit sal genees nie, want die kan nog genees, maar nie versie. En my ondervinding was verskriklik. Skief. Ek het net gedink, ek het die ouers sien, ek het die broers sien. Wat staat my nou te doen? Want ek staar die dood in die oë.
I actually felt quite shattered. I don't want to know that I've got AIDS. That was my first experience. I said, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to keep quiet and live with it. And you need professional help. But then you get angry because people don't understand.
I wouldn't blame the people for not knowing what to do when they encounter me. Many times when I tell someone I'm HIV positive, oh, they just don't know what to do. I mean, they don't want to cry, they can't laugh, they're just at loss, you know, because they don't know, you know. And at the same time, on my side, I also don't know how to react. I don't want to look too happy, as though I'm saying, it's okay, you can catch HIV and you can live positive with it, and you must be happy all the time. I'm also trying to say, look, this is the most distressing thing which can ever happen to you, the most dangerous thing that can ever happen to you. But if I come with tears, it's too negative to people, you know. It's oh, he's crying and he's making the whole thing so negative. And if I come too positive, if I live too positive with it, I'm happy all the time, then I'm again conveying wrong messages. Like I've said, it's like I'm saying it's not dangerous. So we are all caught between a very difficult situation, you know. And the only thing we can say, well, whatever situation we found ourselves at that time, especially if it's the first time, is acceptable, because both I and the other person, we don't know what to do. We don't really.
It seems unreal now to look back upon memories of a childhood which promised an unlimited future. Then, everything seemed to be possible.
Before I was HIV positive, my life was filled with dreams and ideals and things that I want to do. And suddenly after that, it just dropped away. So it's difficult, but you have to face these things and talk about them.
I am scared of death. That is the biggest fear. I must say recently I've gone through the experience that I was with somebody who had AIDS, who died. I was at his deathbed, which has been a very comforting experience to me. Before, people used to say to me, but aren't you scared of the pain and the discomfort? And I wasn't, but for the reason that the fear of death has been so overwhelming that I didn't even worry about pain or anything like that. So one works through these things all the time. Most of the time you're okay about it, but every now and again something hits you and it's a certain aspect of it comes out and you start thinking about it again and in a totally negative way, and you get so scared and negative and depressed. And what am I going to do with the little time that I've got left? And, but I always just think that in a couple of, in a day or so, I'll feel different again. You know, I'll find a way to think about it that's okay, and it'll be fine.
It must be such a difficult thing to do and such a brave thing actually to be positive when you know that you're living with HIV, especially at a time when there's so much prejudice against people with this disease. One can sort of understand why some people won't tell others that they're HIV positive.
What did you do, Krista? Were you able to tell people that you are HIV positive?
It was very difficult for me. The day I heard that I was HIV positive, I have to decide what am I going to do with this. And we were staying in a commune of about 5 students, and they were my best friends. So I felt I must tell these guys. So when I arrived back from the hospital, they were sitting in my room and I blurted it all out. And I was afraid about what their reaction going to be. But instead of shunning me, they were just there for me and they accepted me as who I am, and I was really lucky.
Christo, so what did your friends actually say?
Well, they were sitting there and they were very shocked, as you can think. And then one of the guys said, now, what does that imply? So I said, well, that's the fact. I'm HIV positive. So he said, now, does that mean that we have to keep out a separate coffee mug for you? You see? That was the first and only negative response I ever got from those guys.
And your family? I mean, weren't you nervous about telling your parents?
We were. You see, the first person that I've told from my family was my brother. He's also hemophiliac. And I was very glad that he was near because Liesl and I could really share our feelings with them, and they were there for us. So he accepted it very well, although he was very shocked. My parents and Liesl's parents are living very far off, mine in Durban and Liesl's parents in Pretoria. So we just felt we cannot tell them over a telephone or something that I'm positive. So we decided at first not to tell them. But at some stage, just before we got married, I ended up in the hospital with a lung problem. And then Jakes and I, that's my brother, we talked and he said, well, perhaps we must just tell my father. So we did. And it was very difficult for him not to tell my mother as well. But afterwards, after 2 weeks, I had some complications, and then they decided to tell my mother as well, and it was very hard for them. They were very emotional, but they treated me just as they always did.
You found out you were HIV positive before you were married. Weren't you afraid that Liesl's parents would stop you getting married? And did you tell them?
Well, Michelle, it was very difficult because they were also staying very far away, and we also couldn't tell them on the telephone. And so we decided not to tell them before we got married. We only told them 9 months after we got married. And we were very much afraid about their reaction. So when we stepped into the room and sat down on the bed, we were quite afraid. But we told them, Father, Mother, we knew we did something wrong in not telling you, but this is the fact. I'm HIV positive. My mother-in-law's chin dropped onto the duvet, and my father-in-law, he just sat there and he said, gee whiz, this is really bad. But we will help you as far as possible. And that was the end of the story.
But from what you've said, you've never really had any bad reactions from people when you've told them that you're HIV positive. So would you actually advise other HIV positive people to tell their friends and family?
Well, Nageva, I don't think that we can tell anybody who is HIV positive what he or she must do. I was extremely lucky. I had the support of friends and family, but a lot of HIV positive people don't have that. But I can say one thing, and that is I was amazed by people's reaction. I found that people still really care. Even when we were afraid about going public and telling everybody that I'm HIV positive, I was afraid about people's reaction. And then one of my friends said, I think you will be surprised how positive people will be. And I was. People accepted me just as I am. Okay? So I can really say one thing, and that is people are prepared to share this burden you are carrying. But we cannot tell somebody who's HIV positive that he must do this. But if somebody is considering this, then I would say, yes, go for it by all means, because I really experienced how it helped me. I can now face people and know they know what I'm going through. And there's another thing. If you know that you are going through a thing, and you don't want to share that, you are taking an opportunity away from some people that may be trying to help you. Okay? Some people will really try to help you, and if you're not giving them that chance, you're robbing them of something.
So if people should want to help, it really isn't that difficult to do so. Basically, one must remember that a person living with HIV or AIDS is just another human being. They have the very same needs that we all have.
Oh, I think the important need for an HIV positive person is the same as the important need for many other people who are facing possibly terminal disease, and that would be love, support, and a lot of understanding, you know, psychologically, and then ultimately, when they become debilitated, obviously, practical physical support.
Just to be a friend, just to be there when he needs you.
He needs support and unconditional love. I think that's very important, the unconditional love, but that's the difficult part, to give love without question.
He has to be reminded all the time that we're there for support and that we are accepting him with the disease, that we understand the disease as well. that we will touch, that we will hug without any problems. And I think that's very important for someone who's got HIV infection, because if people start shunning them and not touch, I think physical touch is a very important thing in every human being's life. So that is important. And at the same time, being honest with each other is very important.
Listen to them. If they want to laugh about it, laugh with them, because it's part of the way how they handle it. And if they want to cry, let them cry with them, because it's not his pain only.
One of the less visible consequences of HIV and AIDS is the devastating effect it has on one's closest relationships. HIV places a time limit on those things which are most precious and dear. It robs your love of its future.
I envy people who have been together for years and years, and when something like that enters a relationship, it cuts that off, that advantage of developing such a closeness with a soulmate over so many years. It's just time.
Yes, that is a difficult thing to handle.
Yeah.
To know that your own time is limited and your time with your most precious relationships are also limited. It's really hard.
Yeah. You are talking here about very big things and very sad things, and I feel that I want to help, but I'm not so sure there's anything I can do.
I think we must realize that we do not understand what's the extent, the real extent of the AIDS problem. You see, in all parts of the community, people are going to become ill within the next few years, and these people are going to need a lot of support. But it's not only them. Also, their friends and family are going through a lot of turmoil, and they'll need a lot of support. So the one thing that we can do right now is to change our attitudes towards people with AIDS or who is HIV positive. You see, we must know they are ordinary people with all the basic needs that you have, all right? So put away your prejudice and start to really care.
That's true, because care, support, and love is what friends are really for, isn't it?
Yeah.
I hope you can join us next week. Then we'll look more closely at what you and I, each one of us in our communities, can do to help a person living with HIV or AIDS. So until then, goodbye. Hello and welcome to Love Life. We've been talking about people living with HIV and AIDS and the fact that they all have the same normal basic human needs that we all have. AIDS affects all of us. It isn't something that one community can blame another for. It isn't a racial thing, it isn't a cultural thing, or a gay disease or a heterosexual disease, or a men's or a woman's issue. It isn't anything that we can blame anyone else for. It is our problem, and it's a serious one. Chris, so you could probably tell us just how serious it is at the moment.
Well, it's extremely serious, Caroline. If you look at the world, there's about 13 million people infected with HIV at this stage in the world. A little bit closer to ourselves, in Africa, it's 8 million people.
Sure.
Okay? In South Africa, we have, at this stage, 1,803 AIDS cases, but already they estimate that there's at least 322,000 people infected with HIV virus.
But Krista, isn't anyone going to do anything to stop this? I mean, are we all just going to let the disease spread and spread and spread? Or is someone actually going to do something to stop it?
Well, a lot of people are working on AIDS and the prevention of it. But if you look at the figures, you'll really see how this problem is really becoming dangerous. Because every day another 550 people gets infected.
Sure.
The figures are doubling every 12.05 months. So now we have 322,000 people infected. Next year it's 644,000. 2 years' time, 1.2 million, 2.4 million, and eventually in 4 years' time we'll have 4.8 million people infected. So you really cannot do enough. And as long as people will continue living as they do and still think AIDS is something far-fetched, the figures will only continue rising. But you must remember, we're not talking about numbers here. We're talking about people, sick, infected, dying people. And they've got a lot of friends and family that also need a lot of support. So we cannot do enough, really.
There have been many AIDS awareness campaigns aimed at all sectors of the community, and yet there is still often an apathy among our people, as if they still don't realize that Africa is the hardest hit in the worldwide tragedy of HIV and AIDS.
We believe that until such time that people are faced with the problem of AIDS within their families, within the neighborhood, being friends, bosses, sisters, brothers, it will be then that they will take it seriously. But I can assure you that the problem is becoming more serious in our communities.
There's a major problem. We need to address it, and we need to be honest and open. And we need to talk to people, anybody who listens. In fact, I do talk to anybody who listens. And I need to educate children and not talk about it and have it written on paper and endless meetings. We need to address it now. It's very important.
There are volunteers who support charity concerns like this one in Mulberry, Cape Town. The Pink Shop raises funds for many HIV and AIDS support organizations. There are also more formalized AIDS awareness and support organizations like the countrywide ATIC offices. Here, anyone may come to receive information and counseling regarding all aspects of HIV and AIDS. The workers at ATIC are fully aware of just how serious the issue has become in this country.
HIV is a national problem. It's a community problem. We are not going to be able to cut ourselves off from it. We are all going to know people who are HIV positive. And to be going to say to a whole segment of the community who are people like yourself and myself, we're not interested in you, we don't want you, is like reimposing another form of apartheid. Why should these people be discriminated against? They're sick and they need our help. In many cases, they're still well and functioning and can be productive and are productive members of society. The chances are, in fact, that we probably know them, but know someone who's HIV positive, but they don't even know that themselves.
At this stage, there's still a lot that needs to be done for people in the community. Like, for instance, a lot of educational programs should be run in the community. We're talking about the townships. Very grassroots level workshop can be arranged. And the more the issue is addressed, the more people get aware and the more people start talking about it in the communities.
We feel that people should be in a position to understand the disease, the implication of the disease to a person that has contracted the virus or to a person who is suffering from AIDS. And secondly, I think it is important for people in the community to empathize with these people, because I feel that until such time that we reach that stage, people with AIDS will never be able to get the necessary support from the community.
HIV and AIDS affect all members of society, and society has a responsibility towards those living with HIV and AIDS.
We need far more groups of people that we can refer HIV positive people to for social support, perhaps, for physical support when they become ill, for psychological support. The activities have to be perhaps prompted by the government, but started by community people, community groups who are interested, by even relatives of people who are HIV positive. I think it's a dual effort. The government can't provide all the funds, and it never has done and never will do anywhere, I don't think. So communities have to start helping as well, both financially and psychologically and in their very presence of support.
I need support from my parents. I need support from my family. I need support from everybody that's dealing with me or that's living with me and I'm working with. Not to feel sorry for me, but to fight with me in this big fight against this disease, and not to fight against me.
I find it a dreadful thing that people living with HIV and AIDS are still being discriminated against. It's like they carry a double burden. I mean, they have this disease and they face an enormous financial crisis if they get sick and lose their jobs. And then still on top of that, there are people who want to push them aside and treat them like outcasts. I really feel that we should rather help than blame these people for being sick.
Sure, I'm sure we all agree with you, but we're only teenagers. What can we possibly do that will help, or that will even make a difference?
Well, Maurice, if there's one thing needed in our country right now, it is young people like you guys that are willing to stand up and say, we want to make a difference. We want to be involved in something long-lasting. Now, you don't have to think it's only adults that can be involved in community work. What we've seen is that people, young people like you guys in schools, have started with AIDS support groups within their schools. And now they're spreading the message about AIDS. They have awareness programs. They are breaking down the myths people have about people with AIDS. And in that process, they're working with their own friends. And that's very important. You see, you guys can start such a thing. So if you don't know where or how to do that, you can phone somebody after this program. What is important to know is there's a lot of programs and a lot of people and a lot of organizations busy working on AIDS, and they wish that they have hands to do the work. So if one of you would volunteer, that will help them a lot. So pick up the phone and phone somebody, okay? You can be involved in a lot of different things. You will be used with your own talents and your own gifts. Know that. So be involved.
You might have thought that enough has been said and done about AIDS awareness, but you're wrong. Despite all the work that's been done, there's still prejudice and discrimination against people living with HIV and AIDS.
From our side, we know that within the community, I mean, these people they live in isolation because of fear of rejection and because of the stigma that one has because of the AIDS disease.
It's encouraging to know that effective groups like this one are being formed in schools to promote AIDS awareness among fellow students. In all communities, there are dedicated people doing this important work.
First and foremost, I'm working for the Western Cape Regional Services Council, as you know, working as the AIDS program coordinator. What that means is I work directly with the staff at the various clinics of Nyanga, Crossroads, and Khayelitsha. I would say that I'm basically responsible for creating public awareness. How do we do that? We run workshops, we run awareness programs, we do campaigns during World AIDS Day, and many other things in the community. And also I have the nurses who have specialized, who have go for training on AIDS, and we have also go for training on counseling. So they do have those skills, and they are of assistance to people with AIDS or people who have contracted the virus.
I feel I'd also like to help if I can, but there's just something I'd like to know. When a person is very sick with AIDS, don't they usually go to hospitals or hospices? And isn't this something the hospitals should just cope with?
Well, Enrique, if you look at Tanzania, for example, they report in the hospitals that 1 out of every 6 patients is an AIDS patient.
Yeah.
Now, in our country, it's not that bad already, but as the AIDS patients would become ill, eventually our hospitals won't be able to cope. And then it will be needed that people will be treated at home. Home care is necessary. And you see, home care is a very positive thing because that AIDS patient is then in his well-known environment between his friends and he can be treated there. But for that, people will be needed. And that's where you come in again, okay? You guys can be involved in something like that. There will be people needed just for buying some groceries or going out and collecting the mail or cleaning the house or whatever. Small things that can really make a difference to somebody's life. And I promise you, those things will never be forgotten. So you can make a difference. Go for it.
And I hope we all will make a difference. We won't all be able to help in the same way. We don't have to. But we can all go to our own communities and see where the greatest need is and try to make a difference right there. Well, next week is our last program, and we intend to end on a positive note. So until then, goodbye. Hello and welcome to the last program in our series. We've been talking about a lot of important things like relationships, love, dating, choices, sex, AIDS, peer pressure, and even more choices. And Krista's been telling us that whatever you do, it's your choice. It's up to you to make the decision. But that really isn't always as easy as it sounds. Teenagers have to make difficult choices sometimes, and sometimes these choices aren't made any easier by the sort of world we live in.
Sometimes young people have to grow up in a world which seems to be neither a safe nor a pleasant place. They're surrounded by images of tragedy, suffering, and despair. Humanity does not suffer alone. Nature itself is sometimes in the grip of terrible disaster. People lose sight of the preciousness of their own and other lives. Humanity sometimes seems to have a death wish. Science and technology attempt to intervene, to lighten the burdens of suffering people, but not the most advanced intensive care equipment and the most sophisticated treatments can take away the anguish and pain of those who have a terminal illness like AIDS. The suffering becomes all the more tragic when it involves young people and when it attacks the innocent. Many young people find that they cannot handle the grim realities of this world. But this is the world in which teenagers today have to live and make their life decisions. This is their challenge.
Well, one thing is certain, we're living in a broken up world. And a lot of people are going through a lot of turmoil and anguish. And we cannot, turn a blind eye and hope that these things will suddenly disappear.
But Krista, the world is just as grim and full of sad and horrible things for you as it is for us. But on top of that, you're HIV positive. I would think that that's enough to make anyone feel totally depressed and sad. Do you honestly not feel that way?
I want to share something personal with you, Negeva. I believe, being a Christian, that Christ died for me and he died for this whole world. And therefore, he came and shared with our pain and our anguish. And I know he shared in my pain. And I know he died for me. And therefore, I can really live my life flat out to the full every day of my life. AIDS is a reality, and I have to face that. But I can honestly say, nevertheless, that I have hope.
We should be more honest with people, and if somebody dies in the family, an old aunt or something, we shouldn't just say to a child, oh, the person's gone away to be with Jesus or be wherever. We should say, yes, the person died, or what is death? What is dying? We all die. We are born, we live and we die. We don't have any choices. I mean, we would like to say, no, hold it, I'm not coming around. I'd like to be here for a while longer. And we don't know when that's going to happen. It could be in the next 5 minutes. I mean, anything can happen. So we need to talk about those things because when we find people who are dying, they're anxious, they're scared. What is death? So we need to address it, we need to talk, and lots of people will visit you when you're very sick. Give that one a miss. You know, they'll say, how are you? And the person who looks as if they're on death's door says, no, I'm fine, thanks. Because they don't know what else to say. But if you say, is there anything you'd like to speak about? Anything you'd like to discuss? Sometimes they say, yeah, I'm scared. What's going to happen? So we can discuss it. How do they feel? What do they feel about it? Some of them say, oh, but there's nothing out there. And I think I find the ones who say there's nothing, they're the one, it's scary. Nothing is very scary. Nothing is being in a safe with the light off. And it's dark. And that's nothing. There's no sound. But if we say, maybe there's a light. Lights are great. When you have a light on, you're not scared. And I have found a lot of people who've seen a light. Some call it a star. And they see it in the daytime and at night. And then they say, sometimes I don't think I'm dreaming, I think I'm awake. Maybe they are awake. And yes, we think that to die is another form of living. It releases you from the physical body that is sore and maimed and whatever, into the spiritual body where you're free to go where you like and do what you like and be with lots of people. There are lots of people out there who care as well. And we need more people here in this world that care. There aren't many of those.
Some people are fortunate enough to find warmth and caring among their friends. Loyal friends who remain friends whatever the circumstances. They become a precious support system. They help those who have to live with burdens like HIV to maintain contact with normality. They provide balance and a loving refuge, a much-needed safe place.
I don't want to sound negative, but you do have the virus and could develop AIDS and maybe die as a young person. Doesn't that make you afraid? Aren't you afraid of dying?
Well, personally, again, Maurice, I believe Christ didn't only die for me. He also conquered death. He's alive, and as sure as I am of that, I know that I will be with him when I die. And therefore, I can honestly say, I'm not afraid of dying. I've got hope for the future. I am afraid of the deterioration process of becoming ill and suffering and pain, but I'm honestly not afraid of dying. But I had to make a choice. I had to decide what am I going to do with the time that I've still got left. I don't want to end up in bed and then only find that I want to do something for the community. I wanted to do it right now, and that's what I'm doing.
Christo's community service has already taken him all over South Africa and Namibia. He talks to all young people who are willing to listen. His message is aimed at empowering the youth to make informed, safe choices. Others who are also living with HIV have exactly the same message.
When people see me saying I'm HIV positive, I'm black, I'm straight, I'm not gay, and I have this virus, and I'm already starting to feel the effects of this illness. I don't know how many people believe it, because people want to believe that which is comfortable to them, you know. And many youths are that way. Many of our fellow young people are that way. I talk to them, and probably every evening they go fornicating merrily.
They're playing here with their lives, and it's in their hands, actually. You know, what they're doing is their decision. You can't get AIDS without your consent. And don't take it light, because I don't wish this to happen to anybody, really. This is not my worst enemy. It's a hell of a lot of hell you go through. And it's a lot of things that you have to really come to terms with. It's not worth it. It's not worth playing with your life.
Perhaps as a person living with HIV, the biggest impact I can have is not trying to change lifestyles. Probably I can. I don't know. It's very difficult to measure. I can't go into all the pubs at night to see whether people, after I've given them a message, they're not having fun, if you like. But certainly one thing I'm so sure, the best I can do for people is to make them change the way they look at me and the way they look at other people with HIV. I've done this, I'm sure. I've started with people who completely said people with HIV must be put in prisons, or they must be confined in hospitals. In extreme cases where we are doing a survey in Natal, they said they must be killed. You know, some of the people responses, they must be killed. But after you talk to them, you actually see 180 degrees turn, you know, where they say, oh, we didn't know. When I say, would you kill me? Because I'm living with this infection. And then they ask all sorts of questions. How did you get it? How do you feel? And afterwards, they suddenly realize you're not a monster. And I'm trying to say, look, this is what can happen to you. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be Freddie Mercury or a Magic Johnson. You can be a very ordinary person and you can catch this infection. And first of all, people will say, well, no, it's a gay plague. No, it's a white man's plan. Or no, it only affects whites. Or whatever, you know. And that's very, almost painful to me. And sometimes I really feel, well, if you get it, as long as I talk to you, fine. At least you won't die from ignorance. You're going to die out of choice.
None of these young people need ever get AIDS. HIV infection is completely preventable. Like all teenagers everywhere, they can make choices that will keep them safe. Christo tries to give them that knowledge and awareness, and the courage to make their own choices. Teenagers, like all other people, can say no to HIV and AIDS.
Now, one of those guys said that you cannot get AIDS without your consent. Now, on the one hand, that is a very comforting thought. But on the other hand, it seems to me that it boils down to the same old thing. That's choices. So even when it comes to HIV infection, we can and must make our choices.
But you know, I don't feel equipped or ready to deal with things that are so big and so serious. I mean, this is serious stuff you're talking about, and we're just kids, really. How can my decision possibly make a difference? I'm only a teenager.
Exactly, Michelle. This is the time to decide what you want to do with your life. Don't be negative. Life lies ahead of you, and you can decide right now what you want to do. Take life as a challenge. And when you experience all these changes in your body, or when your heart starts turning over when you see this amazing girl or guy, or even when you just smell the sea or see the mountains, you can know you're alive. And all these negative things on AIDS and all these things of the world, that don't have to take your happiness away.
I hear what you're saying, Christo, but it seems to me that AIDS could still have a pretty devastating effect on our lives.
Yes, but you know all the facts about AIDS. You know all the consequences of becoming involved in casual sex or giving into peer pressure. You know all the different options in handling your relationships. So you can decide right now what you want to do with your life. And if you need help, phone somebody after this program or talk to somebody that you can trust. But I promise you, you can live with hope for the future. Be different. Live and love with hope.
Well, we promised to end on a positive note. So let's all hope for good and positive things. And that includes something like a breakthrough in medical science that will finally cure AIDS. Let's all hope for a better, safer, healthier and happier future. And we wish you a good life and a good love life so that you can really love your life. So from me, Caroline Fassi, and the whole Love Life team, goodbye.